Free Period is a podcast of First Baptist Watauga Student Ministry. For more information about First Baptist Watauga, you can check us out at fbcwatauga.org. Hello and welcome to Free Period, the weekly break you want to take. I'm Kevin Skinner, the Associate Pastor and Student Pastor here at First Baptist Watauga.
And I'm Nathan McGindry, your Young Adult Minister and Assistant Student Minister, also here at First Baptist Watauga.
And today we're going to be answering the question, why should people get married?
But first, before we get to that, we've been doing Victorian-era words from the 1800s, okay. And I have one for you today now.
Yes, you do.
All right, you ready?
Yep.
The word is bricky.
Bricky.
Yep. Like a brick, but
All
bricky.
Right. So I want to try and think outside of the box because the last...
Think outside of the brick.
I just... It's so hard for me to do it. Like, all I can think of is bricks right now, like red bricks. So if something is bricky, like coming to my mind, I'm picturing like dust or chalkiness. So I'm going to go with if something is bricky, it is dusty or chalky.
Very wrong. So wrong.
I assume so.
Oh, yes. No, the correct definition is brave or fearless.
Interesting.
So they might be adjectives referring to people.
That
if they're
person's
acting
really bricky.
Yep.
I mean, I actually kind of like that.
I don't mind it. Bricks are tough. They're strong. Bricky.
Wow.
Brave
Okay.
or fearless.
Well,
not dusty. Gosh.
I think as we answer this question today, we both have to be a little bit bricky because of the content of our podcast today.
A little brickiness required.
Yeah, there's going to be some brickiness. So
we're just going to start throwing bricks at the camera.
Yeah, we are. The camera is going to cease to exist in 5, 4, 3.
All right, we didn't do that.
I did not bring any bricks, but we do have a question.
Yes,
let's
get to today's question. Why should people get married?
All right, and let me start by saying, if you're a teenager listening to this right now, which primordially.
All
right. So let me start by saying, if you're a teenager right now, which primarily our target audience for this podcast is our student ministry. And so if you're a teenager right now, then I would say now is not the time for you to get married, right? And your parents will probably agree with me. Now is not the time for you to get married, all right? So we are not advocating for you to get married right now while you're a teenager. Enjoy being a teenager right now. Enjoy the perks of being a teenager and living at home with your parents and not having the weight of the responsibility of being an adult on your shoulders. So don't get married yet, all right? Now is not the time.
It's also free to not be married. But even though it's not the time for you to get married, there may come a day when it is time to get married. And so we will answer that question now. Why should people get married? Non-teenager people, that is.
Yeah. And so let's first, I think that as we answer this question of why should we get married, we really need to understand the kind of framework that marriage was created for. And so as we think all the way back to the beginning, when God created this world and he created Adam, first he created man, and he looked at man and he said it's good for man not to be alone. And so he created Eve, and as he created Eve was to be everything that Adam would need in another human, in a spouse. And likewise, Adam was to be for Eve everything that Eve would need in a human, in a spouse. And so God created kind of the framework, gave us the picture at the very beginning for how he would establish this relationship of marriage, that it's to be between a man and a woman, that this is how he has created marriage, right? But simply because marriage was created, simply because marriage exists, right? Does that mean that we have to get married? Does that mean that we should get married necessarily?
Paul would say in 1 Corinthians 7:8 that if you're single or you're unmarried, it is, again, okay to remain that way. He actually encourages it in some regards. It is not this wholly necessary, it's kind of the old saying where you complete me, right? Like, you are whole and perfectly fine just as you are. You don't need someone else to complete you. You need Jesus.
That's right.
And so marriage is not something we're certainly obligated to do. You are no less of a person. You are no less of an adult. So, if you're out there and you're just looking for someone to marry, it's okay that you're single right now. It is okay. And I would strongly recommend you take advantage of that. Use that. But, it's a good time to work on yourself and to focus on making sure you're a committed follower of Christ and work on the things that Christ has provided for you to work on before God provides someone that you need to now learn to also be able to take care of. You need to learn how to be responsible for yourself and make sure you're growing before you also add into the fact that you need someone else to be kind of watching out for.
Right.
So,
yeah, and to kind of tag on to what you're saying with that idea of you complete me, or what you said, that we need Jesus to complete us, right? It's not another person that is going to complete us. Jesus is the one that we need to complete us. And so maybe you're feeling, especially if you have never given your life to Jesus, maybe you're feeling like you need to get married to be complete because you're feeling that void or that hole in your life, when in reality, you need to enter into a relationship with Jesus Christ. He is the one that will fulfill you when you're married or when you're unmarried. He's the one that you need to fill that completeness. But as Paul talks about remaining single or remaining unmarried in the same passage in 1 Corinthians 7, Paul talks about marriage as being the boundaries or the correct place for sex to take place. In fact, he says it's because of sexual immorality, because it's so common, that we should get married. All right, and so Paul is essentially saying, we look at our world right now and we're like, man, sexual immorality is so common in our world today, and we're just like, man, it's crazy. But Paul is saying that about his time. He's saying sexual immorality is so common. And so, sometimes we may think that we have really, we're at a much different place than even in the times of Scripture. But honestly, right, Paul is saying sexual immorality is so common. And as we look out at our world, we're thinking the same thing. Sexual immorality is so common. And so Paul says, look, because sexuality is so common, we should get married. Now, understand that term, sexual immorality, means sex outside of the marriage relationship that God has established between a man and a woman. And so Paul is saying, he's not saying just stay single. Like if you're single and maybe you're not married and you're dating someone, he's not saying it's okay to just live with that person and not get married. It's okay to just have sex with that person and not get married. He's talking specifically to people that are truly single. They're not in a relationship. He's like, look, if you're not in a relationship, it's okay to stay single. But because sexual immorality is so common, then he says we should get married. And so if you are in that relationship, right, then it may be time, right, as you're an adult, it may be time for you to get married, especially if you're having desires like Paul talks about in that passage as well.
Yeah, so as we answer this question, you could really take this answer and take it threefold, right? So one, it's not a requirement. You don't have to. Some people remain single all their life. Paul remained single, and he was hopeful that some people could do that as well. And so, one, it's not a requirement. Two, it is good for us to get married, because it's good for us not to be alone, right? Not to say that if you're not married, you're alone. This is why we have the church and other people. It's just good to not be a Lone Ranger Christian, which we like to and rightfully condemn that kind of thinking nowadays. But it's good to take care of another person. So if you think about it from that perspective, it's not good to be alone. Well, it's not good for other people to be alone. So it's important to cherish and take care of someone. But thirdly, it's the boundaries or the established way, kind of the protective way that God's created for mankind to appropriately have that sexual relationship with their spouse.
Yeah.
I mean, you're effectively protecting each other when you do that, because you're committing yourself and saying, look, I'm not going to run away after this, because relationships are weird and it's going to be difficult and complicated. But marriage is that promise that I'm not going to walk away from this conversation.
Yeah.
And so you can talk freely and we can figure things out together. So those are kind of the threefold way, I would say.
Yeah, and I would tag on to that, and this is not really necessarily a reason to get married or the main reason to get married, but I would simply just tag on that your spouse can become a great prayer partner for you. It's just kind of like a bonus, right? It's not necessarily the reason to get married, as we ask, why should we get married? But as you're married, you have this amazing prayer partner to, in my own life, I'm able to just bring stuff to Sarah, or she's able to bring stuff to me, and we can just go to the Lord together in prayer. And so there is this spiritual connection that comes along with being married, that comes along with having that spouse. And so, that is certainly an added bonus. All right. Now, as we think about marriage, as we think about getting married, Nathan, you are getting married in December.
Correct.
You got engaged in
February. Yeah, late February.
All right. And so your wedding is coming up, but more importantly, your marriage is coming up. So what are some of the things right now as we approach December? What are some of the things right now that you and Kirsten are doing in preparation for your marriage?
I'd say specifically marriage. We're not really talking wedding prep, right?
Right.
Okay, cool. So I can ignore all of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all understand that
some of the
there
things that
is
go
a
in.
wedding preparation
Right.
that's happening, but there's a marriage coming up that is much longer than the wedding.
Yeah, I like preparing for the marriage more than I do the wedding. It's more fun to me. But so first of all, we're going to pre-marital counseling, right? So we meet with you, me, Kirsten, and you, and we kind of prepare ourselves. We get some feedback from a longtime married person, and we get some good conversations and questions being asked, which is really a way to start conversations between Kirsten and I. And that's been a lot of the thing that we've been really intentional lately. We're just having conversations, making sure that we kind of get into this habit of being able to talk to each other. So we've just kind of been open about kind of some of the unknowns and what we're going to have to figure out and what we're going to need and expect from one another, and unearthing a lot of those kind of unseen expectations you don't think about.
Right.
And then reading. I've been trying to, over the last year or so, because of going to seminary, I've had options and times where I can get like free books, good opportunities for free books. So I always grab like the marriage ones because I'm like, I want to know what everyone thinks over the years about marriage, so that I can kind of read through those, sift through and find, what some people say, what other people say, and just kind of learn. And I think one of the things Kirsten and I have talked about, we made this agreement maybe a week or two ago, was that when we get married, we want to continuously have a time where we are meeting together over some kind of book that we've been reading together. And so we want to constantly read a book together each year, so that we are just continually to think about marriage. Our goal is that we just don't want to become stagnant. We want to actively pursue our marriage always. And so in our heads, if we're learning together and talking and thinking, then we're intentionally growing together. Because I am under the assumption that marriage is going to be a lot of hard work. Am I correct?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And but I mean, to say that, I don't want to imply that marriage is only hard work, right? No. Marriage absolutely is hard work. Having any relationship, any healthy relationship with a person takes work, but when you are married, and this is a person that you are, you love and you cherish, just like you talked about earlier, you want to take care of that person. It does take work and effort to put into taking care of that person. And then as you have children, right, that it just grows, the amount of people that you love and take care of. And so absolutely there's hard work involved, but there's just so much blessing that comes along with it as well. But as we talk about preparing for the marriage, right, it is important for us to distinguish. There is obviously some planning that goes into the wedding itself, but the wedding is only maybe a 20 to 30 minute ceremony, generally speaking. The marriage is for life, and so it's important to prepare for not just the wedding, because that's going to come and go quickly. It's important to prepare for the marriage, because you want to be the best for your spouse, so that you will have that healthy marriage that you're talking about. Now, one thing you said is that y'all are planning to read books a lot. So this is what I heard: marry me, and there will be homework.
Oh yeah. I am under no impression that we can just stop reading and learning. No, I like learning.
That's absolutely a good and healthy thing. Whether you're getting married or whether you are staying single, just to be a person that is continually learning, because when you're continually learning, it means you're continually growing, and so that is a good thing.
But you can do that when you're single too. Before I met Kirsten, that primarily what I was thinking about, because I got this advice from a fellow believer who actually was married, but it was his advice. I thought, man, I need to take this advice. And it was effectively, embrace the singleness, take the advantage, and learn kind of, who God is calling you to be and what you need to be working on, your weaknesses, and growing those up so that you're ultimately prepared for when God's like, all right, I need you to take care of this person. Yeah. It's like, okay,
Yep.
So
as we wrap up today, I think what you just said right there, embrace the singleness. Most of you students, if you're in the student ministry, you are single right now, so embrace the singleness. But even if you're a young adult or an adult that's single and unmarried, embrace the singleness and let God work in your life right now, right where you're at, until the day comes that He brings you a spouse. And then it's okay. Get married. Yeah. So
pursue one another.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. That's it for this week's episode of Free Period. Join us again next week as we answer the question, if you forget someone, do they really exist?
Bye.
I hope that you enjoyed today's podcast, and I'd love to meet you in person. If you're a student between 7th and 12th grade, you can join us on Wednesday nights for midweek at First Baptist Watauga. You can also join us on Sunday mornings at 9:30 a.m. for growth groups and 10:50 a.m. for worship.